Hello everyone and welcome back to The Artificial DM. Today, we've got a very long RPG horror story. More of a RPG rant, if you will, about one player and her perspective on the other players, the DM, and the game that they were playing. She herself even gives off a little bit of a horror story. As I was editing this down, I was realizing that she really didn't come across as a good friend. But that is just my own view. Be sure to let me know your thoughts after you listen to the story. This story is from Verified on BNet. I cast Hewwo? And other troubles in Waterdeep. I should start by saying this DM is one of my good friends, and an excellent player, but there are a few things he's done that drove me nuts and sometimes still keep me up thinking. The first time he DM'd for me was with a group of about 6 people at the most, with a lot of changing members. We were playing Waterdeep Heist, and then Dungeon of the Mad Mage. We are still supposed to be playing, but he went on hiatus at around the beginning of this year as we ran into some issues playing the latter, which I'll mention later. As best I recall, we started in 2018 and went on our hiatus this year. There's me, Bard, DM's boyfriend, Rogue, boyfriend sibling, Paladin, DM's friends, Sorcerer, and Monk, the toxic player, Wizard, and DM. There were others who would come and go, but we have a lot of flakes in our gaming club. To preface, DM has lived through some stuff and he can be quite insecure. We're both young adults around the same age and prefer roleplay to combat, but we don't always have a lot in common otherwise. I don't know much about video games or other tabletop RPGs other than a bit of World of Darkness and D&D. I'm mostly into indie stuff and horror sci-fi, and DM is more into stuff like Skyrim, Overwatch, Minecraft, and all the gamer stuff the kids these days do. Point being, he has been DMing and playing D&D longer than me, and we have different playstyles and preferences. We mostly agree on things, aside from maybe some challenge in tonal preferences, so maybe some of this stems from him having different tastes. I also think it's important that I say that I owe all my tabletop experience to this friend. He taught me how to play, encouraged all my creative efforts put into the games, and encouraged me to start DMing myself, which I've only been doing since fall of last year, and I'm having a great time. I respect him as a friend, and as my sort of tabletop RPG teacher / mentor. I'm not going to start shit with him over some petty mistakes that I don't think the average person is above. Honestly, a good amount of this shit is on his players, and it never absolutely ruined the game. But I signed up after reading some posts here, because I genuinely want to hear what other people think of these little snapshots. So, on with the pettiness. A few minor spoilers for Waterdeep Dragon Heist and Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage. The Waterdeep Heist was the first game he had run for me, but I knew he had previous experience of some kind, as he's been the president of our school's game club, but don't ask me exactly what he'd played or ran in the past. We've never gotten around to talking about it in exact details. I don't remember much from the beginning. We get into a fight in the tavern and get on our quest. My first concern at that point was why Wizard was even with us. He was a fine player, but a bit of a tragic lone wolf who would always grin huge and wink nudge at us when his backstory came up, but also actively pushed anyone who tried to grow a relationship with his character away. I always loved building up a team dynamic through roleplay, and in character, I tried to press him for details on his character when it came up, but he would dismiss anyone's attempts to talk to him and only want to talk to his backstory NPCs rather than us. His character didn't trust us with his sad backstory about how he had been murdered and brought back into the service of a lich, but would always tease us with it regardless. He at least worked with us, but he would treat all of us like we were idiots, and act like he was the only world-wise soul in the group, my character being an especially easy target. Wizard is a dude, and I'm a girl. Unfortunate, because he always tended to condescend towards people, especially girls. He'll try to mansplain anything and everything for hours, at times creating huge distractions because he's explaining how his subclass works or something about the lores and rules. You can imagine how fun that is for me, who was just graduating from totally new to D&D to decently knowledgeable. I'm a fast learner, thankfully. Or something irrelevant to what's happening like Warhammer lore, and it only got worse and more frequent with time, to the point that he derailed a session from a different game DM runs with him and me in it to talk about how holy water works. Out of game, DM also complained about rude behavior and how he was getting more obnoxious, seemingly, by the month. I remember always giving him a weird look, and finally I had to ask, "Why did you let him in then?" To which the DM said, "He asked to." This is honestly one of the more baffling things about DM, that he has yet to truly learn from. If someone asked him to be let into a game, it seemed that he'd simply let it happen. The dude can't say no, and whether it's because he's too shy, or because he's too tied up in obligations, he always seems to put himself in pretty unfortunate situations that I always felt he could just turn down. I mean, it's your game. Why invite someone you don't even like? Being a doormat would lead to quite a few of mine and his frustrations. My advice, if I'm in any position to give any, to anyone looking to start DMing but doesn't want that one person joining, ask them what character they have in mind, then shake your head pityingly and say, "Sorry, I already have a character like that," or "Sorry, it's not a good fit, but come back if you come up with something else." The key is your tone. You have to say it like you're working a customer service hotline. Yeah, you're a bit sad, but mostly you're just distant and professional. And never discuss future games you want to run with this person, or who you already have on board. Ever. I call those company secrets, and if your competitors get a hold of them, they can take your whole business. Back to Wizards though. We eventually get into a tomb looking for a key of some kind? Side note, I had a pretty hard time keeping the details of what was going on in the story straight. I can't say if it's just because of the module, which I've never read, or because of me, or if it was genuinely being conveyed weirdly. DM tended to move us forward through episodic adventures rather than overarching plot, which I enjoyed, but it left me confused at times, and I still don't understand some of how the connecting tissues between adventures worked, or what they had to do with the horde of dragons. Anyways, he says he has an ally there who can help us, and after a bit of exploring, we run into a whole-ass lich. I just pictured a giant buttocks as a lich. It's not pretty. That lich is apparently the ally he was talking about, and at first, I don't really understand how powerful a lich is supposed to be. I never read the monster manual at that point, as I was dedicated to not metagaming, but neither does my character, so I don't really bat an eye at everyone freaking out until we somehow manage to get into a combat with the lich in tow. The damn thing casts power word kill and then finger of death on the monsters we're fighting, and I start to get the picture. At the time, I really didn't give a shit, but looking back now that I've become a DM myself, I honestly don't understand what DM must have been thinking. The lich didn't stay with us long after that at least, and once we wrapped up Wizard's backstory, what do you know, he didn't either. Too wrapped up in his own character lore to keep moving with the group adventure, maybe. I don't have much sympathy for him, what with the attitude and mansplaining. I can understand that your character may have powerful contacts. I had one myself, but I was cautious not to ask for powerful favors or anything. In fact, I may be a roleplay person at heart, but I still would have been mad if my powerful ally swept in and stole glory. DM was also a bit too easy on us for my taste at times. But this annoying mansplainer got a CR21 immortal monster to cast power word kill on some random mooks? We were all about level 4 at this point. After Wizard left is about the time Monk showed up. At first, I felt I was enjoying her company, and I even thought her character hijinks were funny. Until I found out her character had a 6 in wisdom, and she intended to play it. We were just starting on a stealth quest with high stakes, and I was excited to use my high dexterity and climbing speeds. College of Satire gave me a climbing speed of 10. But fate had other plans for my bard, because we were blessed enough to run into Monk. She was actually not a monk yet, and thank God she decided she was too bored to keep going with Miss 6 wisdom, because she immediately started talking to the party at full volume while they tried to hide. Cue the guards running out. Monk and DM are laughing like it's hilarious, but I can see eyes roll, and I'm pretty frustrated, and I only got more irritated because I was having to spend all my turns in combat trying to use my movement to meet back up with them for like 5 rounds. I get that things have to be tracked accordingly, but if a player is just standing around trying to get to combat instead of actually using their turn to be in combat, just drop them in. It's not fun to just waste turns, and it was frustrating because as a tiny character, I relied on the help of the other members to even do simple tasks like push heavy doors and carry anything over 10 pounds. I was stuck behind an unlocked door. That's why I couldn't fight. Finally, I make it in time to see combat basically end, and Monk would continue to ruin all chances of stealth missions, being loud, deciding her character would forget basic information, or ignore obvious danger. I would grow to resent this player, as she would just lean back and laugh at the shit she got us into. At the start of winter break, she announced she was changing characters because she was bored, and I was so relieved. She would sometimes not show up, and I didn't know enough to speak up at the time, so I ignored it. When she showed up with her monk, I was actually glad to meet them. They had a cool class combo where our characters could combine our abilities to navigate difficult scenarios in some genuinely creative ways. But of course, Monk would still get bored. And I think you can pick on a theme with this person. Her boredom and need to just do the craziest, most dangerous thing possible was positively world-ending. She decided she was going to get us into a fight with Xanathar, while we were all under-leveled. I wanted to kill her then and there. She got Sorcerer killed with the Death Ray, and I almost got petrified. I tried to play as smart as I could for a relative beginner who hadn't been trying to focus on mechanics with my frail little bard. I had invested in a good AC and HP with a focus on buff spells, and I had a decent magic weapon made for my size. I was able to hide underneath Xanathar, so I was out of range of the beams, and cast hideous laughter so he couldn't attack, and I tried to urge everyone to run. Maybe we could have beaten him, I'm not sure, but I didn't particularly want to, as it would have been pretty anticlimactic, and DM would later confess that it annoyed him to have his main antagonist killed so soon. DM decided that he wanted to keep Xanathar in play longer, so some cultists brought him back as an undead, which really only made me angrier, because the defeat we had just managed to swing was pointless now. But Monk refused, and decided she was going to steal his pet fish. Xanathar is basically a mafia boss in Waterdeep, and his fish is a beloved pet that he would have gladly killed to get back. We were in serious danger just keeping it around, but she decided the risk was worth a laugh. We had to get Sorcerer revived, which worked out okay for her, because having died gave her something for her character to work with. Up to that point, she was just playing a somewhat spiritual character who would only either roll to do some sex work. There was never any graphic descriptions. Calm down. Her character was just a sex worker, and that's all there was to it. Or occasionally talk to us. This person had touted the role-playing skills in the past, but I think I've only seen her do one basic character personality and one accent. In another episode, while we were meeting Sorcerer for the first time, who was tasked with guarding a secret entrance to the Horde, and even she didn't really know much about the Horde or who was out to get it, which I kinda liked. But she had this dragon thing with her for some reason as a pet? I don't know what its abilities or CR were like, but I still have no clue why she knew this dragon. DM really likes animal companions, and I do remember him making it a point to emphasize how cute and playful the dragon was, but it was only relevant for like 30 minutes. If I ever did find it cute, I immediately got annoyed by it after we ran into a puzzle on our way into the dungeon, and it just solved the puzzle we were working on for us. DM snickered and was like, "The dragon knew the whole time! They were just messing with you!" I was not as amused. DM would continue to invite players who only seemed very interested in playing meme characters. Paladin was a brick wall when it came to their character, pretty much only having a name and a girlfriend from a different campaign, and would be playing on their phone or eating smelly foods. Most of the time they weren't throwing fire spells. DM had allowed them to take a homebrew, Hewwo, Cantrip. It was 2019 by this point, and all the damn thing did was make everyone around the caster hostile to them, including us at one point, at which point we all decided to rule that we didn't immediately attack her character for belting out aloud, "Hello!" At which they roleplayed out loud. I think I risked losing teeth from how hard I was clenching them in pain. They stopped using it after a while, probably realizing it wasn't actually very funny. By this time, all the dreams of a tight, found family style dynamic of fun, lovable characters, all bound by one noble cause, had been thoroughly dashed. The party wasn't even speaking to each other until it came time to crack jokes. I'll admit, I was silly too sometimes, but I was definitely too eager for what I saw as approval from more experienced players to outshine their own misadventures. I think you can be a bit disruptive to the party as a flaw, but you should be working to help your team more often than you actively contribute to hurting them. And definitely not get them into fights with bosses when they're unprepared. Rogue and I were the only characters left from the beginning of the module by the time DM announced we were starting Mad Mage, and as soon as he described what it was about, I got a sinking feeling. DM is a fairly casual guy, playing fast and loose and often making things up on the fly. This has been the cause of some both truly wonderful and truly awful and confusing moments. If you're going to DM, my advice is to think and plan ahead, even if it's only a small idea, or a drawing, or a map. Something to refer back to is going to save you. DM pretty much never prepped, and I don't even think that was a bad thing in itself. He was busy, and we just played for fun. But here was our casual DM, who probably never prepped more than an hour total for every bi-weekly game, telling me that he was about to run a mega dungeon of traps. I hate dungeon crawls for starters. I didn't know that I did until then. If I was just going to slash my way through 4 encounters a session with our party of only bards just for treasure and items, I would play a video game. Better yet, I'd play a different character. My bard, who put no value in money or treasure and gave away everything they found to the people of Waterdeep, was built for support and dodging and outlasting, rather than overpowering enemies, and had nothing to do with the quest hook, did not belong there. DM definitely did not belong there either. He was often just as surprised as we were by the traps and encounters that we ran into, and I could tell he had read none of it before starting, and he was getting as bored as me with the game. Like I said, our tastes don't always match up, but this time I think we were having the same realization that neither of us were dungeon delving material. Where usually I didn't really care much about when we leveled up next, it was becoming the only thing most of us were looking forward to, as the items we found were often fairly useless aside from the monetary value, and the fights were getting shallow and repetitive. We probably fought a group of bugbears about 10 times in 3 floors. I thought I would go along with it, as I didn't realize just how many floors the dungeon was. 23 levels! Apparently, there's supposed to be a different theme and conflict per floor, but we never saw any of it, aside from one having goblins, one having some spiders, and one a training area. But players were getting restless, and it was actively worsening the mood and dynamic. Monk got bored again, and this time she decided to eat a demon heart and then convinced DM that they wanted to play a demon hybrid. This horrible abomination's only shtick was that they would cry out in anguish about their cursed nature in a silly voice, and then she gained an obsession with money that compelled them to hoard and occasionally tried to steal the treasure we found. Why did she do this if it made her character so unhappy? I have no idea. A whopping 2 personality traits though. Hey, it was more than one, a new record. I couldn't have cared less. We were already wealthy, and I didn't really want any new items unless they could promise something big, but it was the only thing I felt like we were really earning, and I was getting fed up with Monk's constant boredom and her own lame jokes. DM also has some mental health issues, and Sorcerer had steadily been getting worse at managing her own, which made her loud, distractible, panicky, and overall absent from the game. I felt awful for her, as out of game, I would consider her a part of my social circle. She was more DM's friend, but she invited me to hang out, and I enjoyed her conversations sometimes. She would eventually get too flaky and cynical for me to want to hang out with. DM and I have mutual complaints about her not making enough efforts to avoid triggering content in her games and in her discussions, as well as some self-destructive habits that we can't get her to drop. At the table, she would just get louder, more off topic, and walk out in the middle of games to have a smoke or be alone. We tried to get her to stop playing a bit, and she was clearly not okay, and was barely playing her character, mostly having her girlfriend, our druid who joined later, roll dice for her or even run her character for her. One day, the sound of her and Monk yell-talking over everyone caused DM to feel a bit overwhelmed, and he had to walk out, leaving us silently stewing in guilt and awkward quiet. Around that time, Rogue and DM also had a relationship qualm over text while we were in the middle of playing, and he, and Sorcerer, and DM walked out. God, I get so uncomfortable just thinking about how we just sat in there trying to make small talk until DM came back, red-eyed. I'm still pissed that Rogue made the poor flooper cry in the middle of his own game, but other than that, he was a well-behaved, if quiet player. In his defense, I never found out what went down, as it's not my business. If nothing else, me and Monk had a fascinating discussion about extraplanar spells while they all cooled off. It was something to do. I was under the impression that Sorcerer just needed something more involved and more in line with her interest. She loves vampires, And when I decided I wanted to run Curse of Strahd, I thought an invite would bring a little joy to her life and maybe calm her down. Somehow, it made sense at the time, and in my defense, I was able to keep her on topic a bit better. But of course, her problems would never have just gone away with a fun game. She got an injury, and I tried to imply she should relax at home rather than come to the session, but she came anyways. She aggravated it during my game, getting too rowdy and falling out of her chair, and had to go, and she made one of my players walk her to the car. I tried to insist that I go, and my players could have a break, but she waved me off saying to go on without her. Okay, and I guess I'm supposed to just go on without our cleric too? I can sympathize with her having a rough time, and maybe not accepting the help you should, but it was frustrating and painful to watch. At the beginning of this semester, I finally confronted DM about the fact that he didn't seem to be enjoying Mad Mage. I accept that we may have some problem players at the table, as the game club was full of obnoxious people, and being president, DM probably didn't have the luxury of pretending he wasn't running something, and he considered these people his friends. I hadn't realized before just how much he let people push him around, but if the DM didn't enjoy their game, how was anyone enjoying it? I had a heart-to-heart with him, and he let out all of his frustrations. How he couldn't feel like he could say no to people wanting in, how he was bored with the dungeon, how he felt burnt out, and I told him it was about time to find a new module, or at least take a break, and that I would help him by sending him all the books and one-shots I had gotten hold of. It sounds silly, but it was a genuinely nice moment. Here I was, the person he had to literally walk through every step of combat 2 years ago. The person who had patiently explained everything I needed to know about the game we played together, helping him gain the confidence to just take a break. It felt good to pay him back like that, at least a little. DM loved my bard, and looking back, he may have even subtly favored me when it came to overcoming challenges. But the guy was tired of putting up with everyone else and a book he didn't know how to run, and I respect him for even getting that far. He finally announced he was taking a break, and when we restarted, he would be running something different, while Rogue started his Eberron game. Unfortunately for me, Sorcerer and Wizard would end up in the DM's World of Darkness game with me and the Rogue and the Cleric from the Curse of Strahd party. It all comes back around, Chekhov's Cleric. When it comes to this story, overall, it just sounds like the table as a whole just had some problems. It could have been the DM not reining in his players, it could have been the players, it could even be the perspective of this poster. I was getting a little bit of vibes as if this was a post from Am I the Asshole? OP had some good points, but I do want to point out, passive-aggressively being like, oh sorry, that character is a bad character, where he was suggesting ways how to tell players or people that you don't want in your gaming group that they shouldn't be part of your game, is actually like a scummy way to do it, in my opinion. Personally, I would just tell them, sorry, I don't have any more room for players. Or tell them, I've got a gaming group I really enjoy right now, and I don't feel comfortable adding another player. But tell them that in the future, you'll hold a one-shot, and go ahead and invite them. The thing about tabletop RPGs is that it's a game. If you are having a worse time playing the game than you are not playing, you need to reflect a little bit. I do have to say, OP did bring it back home when he talked about having a heart-to-heart with the DM and telling him, listen, Dungeon of the Mad Mage is not a good fit for the group, nor for you. So I do give him props for that, but overall, it sounds like the group needed to sit down and just have a conversation. It probably wouldn't have been a pleasant conversation, but anywhere that you have people, you're gonna have problems. And it very well could have been. OP and the rest of the table had different views when it came to playstyle. We've seen some stories that reflect that in the past. But being as OP did have a conversation with the DM, and the DM reflected on it and decided to end his Dungeon of the Mad Mage, it does tell me that there were some situations going on. So, what did you think of the story? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I try to get around to reading everybody's comments. I do appreciate every single one of them. Thanks for enjoying the video, and if you want to, please hit the like button. It really helps me out. Until next time, hope you feel inspired.